Hello and welcome to a special free agency edition. We'll see whether the Utah Jazz have anything up their sleeves, what happens in the rest of the NBA, and we will kind of watch the news with you as it's taking place. Chat room is open for you if you have the opportunity to drop it in there. I will try to react to any of your questions and things of that nature. If someone wanted to throw me a test, I just threw a test up there. You can let me know whether or not you see it or not. And we'll kind of break as the news flows. Nothing crazy has happened so far. Yes, Stanley says I'm straight out of the shower. Actually, I just cleaned my hair. I didn't shower. So I'm getting your chats. We're all good. It's my first time actually ever using our new platform for going live on things. The first news is that Draymond Green has re-signed a 4-year deal with the Golden State Warriors. So no big shift in the Western Conference power. They will still be a impact player with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, and weirdly with Chris Paul. Free agent center Drew Eubanks has agreed to a 2-year deal with the Phoenix Suns. Player option in that second year. So Phoenix trying to fill out their roster a little bit. Cleveland Cavaliers have agreed to a new 2-year deal for $32 million with Karis LeVert. Cleveland LeVert is a highly inefficient offensive player that scores a good deal. And so somehow people kind of like that. And LeVert gets a lot of pub, but he is wildly inefficient. Kyle Kuzma has signed a 4-year deal for $102 million. $102 million to re-sign with the Washington Wizards. Well, I said this on Locked On Jazz today that the deal, the John Collins trade, will look better by Monday. Like, it looks good already. It will look better as of when you look at on Monday, because I think we're going to see Jeremy Grant get a monster deal here at some point today. And I think you're going to see, and we just saw Kyle Kuzma get 25. I thought he'd get a little more. I actually thought he'd get about 28 million deal. So I think that was a little kind of maybe in the ballpark, but I think Jeremy Grant could get up to 30 million at some point today. And then you look at John Collins in that similar type of position, and his deal looks a lot better. Kobe White, 3-year, $40 million deal to stay with the Chicago Bulls. Josh Okogie has agreed to stay with the Phoenix Suns. Only important just because we're trying to figure out what's taking place. From a Jazz standpoint, the biggest news today is that Mark Stein reported that the Jazz are actively working with Jordan Clarkson on an extension. That could mean that would tie up all of the remaining cap space for the Jazz, that they're using that cap space to be able to fill out that extension for Jordan Clarkson, and then our roster is pretty well set. Our roster's 16 right now, and I was actually just out on kind of a little basic bike ride, kind of working through the rotation in my head in some ways. And like, if you think about where we are as a roster, let's say you start Talen Horton-Tucker, Jordan Clarkson, Lowry Market, and John Collins, and Walker Kessler. You're coming off the bench with Collins, Sexton, Ochai Agbaji probably sliding into 3, Markkanen sliding down to the 5, Olynyk stepping into that lineup, and Ochai slides over, Sexton slides in, and if Chris Dunn plays, maybe Chris Dunn's playing with that group too. You probably have to separate a few other people in that. And so I think when, there's a pretty close to a 9-man rotation already. Playing 10's hard, and that's before any of the rookies end up at all getting any time. I mean, you can fill out our rotation without the rookies getting much of anything at all. Special hello to Dalen, special hello to Andy, Kenneth. Just want to say hello to the guys who said hi. And Mike says, I just cleaned my Ionic while eating a Built Bar. That's fairly accurate. So I don't know if root beer guy wants to know if there's anything the Jazz are going to do. I think that, we'll see. Now, the other thing the Jazz have done in the last few days is they've just come up with a bunch of tradable pieces, right? They have a lot of different tradable pieces now in these deals. John Krasinski is reporting that Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who was option was not picked up, will stay in Minnesota. So that he will be re-signed by Minnesota in that. The Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole are on the same team. I didn't realize that is a interesting little non-efficient often shooting. Dalen says, seen this around the interwebs already, but the fact that every announcement except Bruce Brown is a player returning to the same team shows tampering investigations seem to be working. Maybe teams can negotiate these deals with their own players, so that's actually completely fine. The first year on the Draymond Green 4-year deal, by the way, is $22.3 million. He declined a $22.6 million option. So that gives saves the Warriors a tremendous, tremendous amount of money. JC Ernest goes, can we have a Dog Days of Summer Locked On Jazz edition covering finance and contract terms such as, oh my gosh, you want to like bore everyone to death? No, but we actually should have. I kind of came close to doing a CBA edition the other day because I just thought it was so important. Let's see. Ben agrees with me that Karis LeVert is inconsistent. Renegotiation and extend. How about the Jazz trading some assets for DeJounte Murray? Well, we just did our first deal with Atlanta, so I'd have to. I mean, this is the thing on the assets. Like when the Jazz decide it's time to move some of these assets, it has to be the piece, right? You don't want to go use 3 of your assets here and then need one of them to go get a real piece, right? That's a little bit what you have to be worried about when you kind of start playing around and also get a little desperate with in that sense. And I think that's where you have to we have a tendency as fans to really want to push as fast as we possibly can. And I'm not sure that's always the best answer for the organization. Love the numbers, by the way. Great to have all of you involved here live on the show. Let me just send out a tweet to let people know. Let's see. Currently watching. Let's send out this tweet. Currently watching the free agency happen live on Locked On Jazz on YouTube with our everydayers. Please come join in. Trey Lyles has signed a 2-year, $16 million deal with the Sacramento Kings to stay. The Phoenix Suns have signed Josh Okogie, Drew Eubanks. They replaced Landell, and now they have signed Damian Lee. So Phoenix is suddenly signing a bunch of different players to try to fill in their roster that will have their Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker as the key to their team. The Phoenix Suns have also signed Keita Bates-Diop out of who was with San Antonio last year, the former Big Ten Player of the Year, who really had never found his bearings prior to this. So they are just James Jones is filling out that roster in every way he possibly can right now with all these news. Trey Lyles, 2 years, 16, I just said. And Kyle Kuzma is probably the big story right now. The 2 biggest stories right now. Kyle Kuzma, 4-year, $102 million to re-sign with the Washington Wizards. Golden State re-signing Draymond Green. And then the Lakers, who I think could really have a pretty good day, added Taurean Prince as their first move here, and the Lakers could be pretty good. Anthony Slater of The Athletic is reporting, I did have time to do the math, so I'll give him credit. It's $43 million in tax savings for the Warriors that Draymond Green went from 27.6 to 22.3. Here's the collective bargaining agreement is going to have a weird impact on this. We're going to see some players, I think, with some kind of mid-level mid-level players getting some bigger deals than you'd expect. And there's two principal things that are going on right now in the new collective bargaining. One is the 90-degree rule, 90% rule. And the 90% rule is that every team has to spend at least 90% of the salary cap. And if they don't spend 90% of the salary cap, they get no tax distribution. They eliminate their room under the cap back to the minimum. And they have to do it the first day of the season. So the first day of the season can become like a new little trade deadline right the week beforehand in some ways. The other one that the league has done is it's loosened up a bunch of restrictions on the teams that are just a little bit over the tax. So if you're on the first apron which is $7 to $8 million over the tax, if you go over that number, you can no longer sign players on a buyout. Trade margin is now 110%. Is now 100%. So you go to 7 to 8 million. But if you stay under that, you suddenly, the non-tax room, the biannual, they're no longer restricted. Room exception is up to 30%. MLE can be used as a trade. Like there's a bunch of these are all kind of, those things can all happen now. So what they've done is they've kind of created this like sweet spot where from right below the first apron, which is 7 million over the tax, to the 90%. And every team's going to be in there. Some teams will go over the first apron. I don't think anyone's going $17 million over the tax into the second apron. That will have such catastrophic influence on teams, including freezing of draft picks 7 years later that you then can't trade. And you don't get that draft pick unfrozen until you're out of the tax for like 3 or 4 years. So it's a crazy restrictive thing. So I think that's as close to we're going to see in that. Bruce Brown, Denver Nuggets, Bruce Brown signs a 2-year, $45 million deal to play with the Indiana Pacers. So Indiana uses their cap space. And as I wrote in Bruce Bowen as I'm trying to write this up right now, as I'm self-producing the show, there'll be some mistakes. 2-year, $45 million deal for Bruce Brown with the Indiana Pacers. Ty Sullivan, by the way, Donovan Mitchell's agent, is the one who did that deal. He started with Donovan and got that, and now has kind of gained a bunch of clients along the way. So that is a big loss to the Denver Nuggets on that one. The Taurean Prince deal by the Lakers is a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. That's pretty good by the Lakers. The Lakers are set up, I think, to be able to have a pretty good day-to-day. And that's, I think, one that's worth watching to see. So we see the biggest Bruce Brown to the Pacers. And the Pacers were a cap space team. Rockets were a cap space team. Spurs were a cap space team. So we haven't seen all of that cap space go. Jazz are a cap space team, but Mark Stein reported today that the Jazz are working on a deal to try to go get a extension done with Jordan Clarkson. And if, in fact, they get that deal done with Jordan Clarkson, they may be using some of their cap space. The way this works is that the Jazz can take the remaining cap space, give it to Jordan Clarkson this year, and then decline his contract the next years to get it to actually a reasonable number that you'd expect it to be. Kobe Strickland is wondering whether or not we should trade for Damian Lillard. Now, there's two things. As of right now, Dame's not available. And Jeremy Grant has just signed with the Portland Trailblazers. So that's a big move because that's the question I had today was whether or not Jeremy Grant leaves Portland. Jeremy Grant signs a 5-year, $160 million deal with the Portland Trailblazers. Portland had really boxed themselves into a corner. And I think Indiana was a suitor there. to Indiana was a suitor for Jeremy Grant, forcing Portland to go up. And then Indiana may have gone for their second choice, which was Bruce Brown. So that's a big move because this is Portland committing to Damian Lillard that they're trying to get better. So when Kobe's want to know whether you trade for Jeremy Grant, well, right now I don't know that trade for Damian Lillard. I don't know that Damian Lillard's actually going to be available to be traded for. The other thing on Dame, I would trade for Dame tomorrow if he had 2 years on his deal. But his 4 years on his deal is so prohibitive. And I actually think in some ways it's prohibitive enough that Portland may have a hard time trading if they wanted to, which has forced them even more so to be able to kind of to be in the situation they're in right now, where they are forced to, keep Dame because they're not going to get a lot of value for him, and then pay Jeremy Grant 5 years, $160 million. Boston and Kristaps Porzingis are expected to finalize a 2-year, $60 million extension. So 2-year, $30 for Kristaps, 5-year, $160 for Jeremy Grant's over $30 a year. Kyle Kuzma came in at 4 years, $102, $25 million a year. So a lot, you look at these deals right now, and this is where I made the comment that I thought that the John Collins number at $25 million a year, which is 25 this year and 26 the next year, which was originally a 5-year, $125 million deal, it's going to look just fine. Like John Collins got what Kyle Kuzma's getting. I'm not sure who I necessarily think's the better player there. Jeremy Grant went and got over 30. It makes the Jazz basically signed John Collins to a 2-year plus 1 player option at $26 million a year is their free agent deal. And they did it while getting off Rudy Gay's contract in the meantime. So you can decide what you think of that. The Troy Brown has left the Los Angeles Lakers to the Minnesota Timberwolves in a move that probably does not have a lot of relevance on how any season plays out on this. Let's go back to our chats as we see what stories are happening and sorry, just trying to look up and find out where I was in the chat room. Somebody wants Joe Ingles back. Okay. He will be on the minimum. What do we do for a point guard? Monty Morris would be one that I would be interested in, who's in Washington. We'll see whether they move him. He just plays the game right and can do a lot of things of that sort. Did Danny Ainge really say he feels the league is trending away from traditional floor general point guards? That's the way I read Tony Jones' story today in The Athletic, that he said that, and that, I think it's an interesting question. And maybe it's just that the Chris Paul, Mike Conley 6'1" guard, but I'll tell you what, I still think you've really got to have a point guard settling things, controlling things. I think that's, I thought you saw it with us that we just struggled late in games after we traded Mike Conley, right? We were so good in late in games early. He just settled us. He made plays, had that veteran experience. And when we lost that, I think, we're missing that. And so it's interesting to me. I mean, if we start Taylor Horton Tucker, Jordan Clarkson, Lowry Markkanen, John Collins, and Walker Kessler, I mean, we're huge. Taylor's like a 7-foot wingspan. JC's 6'4", 7 foot, 6'9" with a limited wingspan, and Collins 7'1". Like, we're mammoth huge. We should be able to defend. But it's not a lot of passing, not a lot of moving. It would be nice to have somebody that really is a point guard. There aren't a lot out there, right? Like I said on the show today, that D'Angelo Russell, I think, will have a terrible day today. There's a lot of people in the league who do not think a lot of D'Angelo Russell. It's been interesting to me. I've called around and asked a bunch of people on that. And there have been, people have kind of, their answer on this has been that, I would stay away from him. Like, I wouldn't touch him. Wow, this one's big. Max Strus, 4-year, $64 million deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Cleveland, who has been desperate for that third shooter, and that shooter in that position has got it in Max Strus. And Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland have to be just ecstatic about that. Joe Harris is being traded by the Brooklyn Nets to the Detroit Pistons for a bare minimum by league rules $110K and 2 future second round picks, which will probably never develop. This is Detroit trying to go get to the 90% rule, and the Nets trying to get out of their luxury taxes. So there we're seeing the new CBA impact take place with Joe Harris going to Detroit, and now Detroit has both Joe Harris and Bojan Bogdanovic. They'll be able to shoot it. I don't know if they'll defend anyone. They'll be able to shoot it. And Joe Harris feels like injuries are tearing away at his career a little bit. All right, let's review big stories so far in the opening 20 minutes of free agency. Draymond Green re-signs with the Golden State Warriors for 4 years. Karis LeVert signs for 2 years with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, Max Strus, signing a 4-year, $64 million deal, leaving the Miami Heat in the process. Jeremy Grant signs a 5-year, $160 million deal with the Portland Trailblazers, signifying that Portland is in, not rebuilding. Dame's getting his team to be built. Probably means Dame's not on the market, or Portland couldn't find anything for Dame on the market. Indiana steals Bruce Brown from the Denver Nuggets. He signs a 2-year, $45 million deal. Kyle Kuzma stays in Washington on a 4-year, $102 million deal. Kobe White, 3-year, $40 million deal to stay with the Chicago Bulls. Phoenix, trying to fill out their roster, has signed Josh Okogie, Drew Eubanks, as well as Keita Bates-Diop and Damian Lee. So a full signing for all of those. Reggie Jackson has agreed to a 2-year, $10.5 million deal with the Denver Nuggets. I'm assuming that's to replace Bruce Brown, who signed with Indiana so far. So Denver faces probably Christian Brown will be the first person to probably fill in there and try to take that role. Well, interesting to see what else Calvin Booth does. Let's see if anything else. No Eric Gordon signing yet. Most of the big, if we go look at the John Hollinger top free agents, most of them, like they're coming, or we just look, if we look, Kyrie is no Kyrie as of yet. So that's the biggest name still left out there. James Harden has not been traded as of yet. Fred VanVleet is still out there. Kristaps has signed a 2-year extension with the Boston Celtics. Miles Bridges and all of his legal stuff there. Josh Hart stays. D'Angelo Russell, we haven't heard. Chris Middleton, Milwaukee, we haven't heard. Cam Johnson, restricted in Brooklyn, we have not heard. Jakob Poeltl, nothing. Draymond Green has signed. Austin Reeves, no word yet. Gary Trent Jr. stayed on a player option. Trey Jones is restricted, we haven't heard. Jordan Clarkson opted in. PJ Washington's restricted out there. Kobe White re-signs with his team. Jeremy Grant re-signs with his team. Bruce Brown goes to Indiana. Nothing on Dylan Brooks yet. Harrison Barnes never got to the free agent market. He stays with the Sacramento Kings. Christian Wood, the Mercurial one, is out there. Dante DiVincenzo, an interesting player. No word. Brooke Lopez and Chris Middleton are like the biggest story at this point of what happens with Milwaukee. Grant Williams in Boston, also no word yet. So still some big dominoes to fall and see. Warriors, by the way, now have Steph, Wiggins, and Draymond all locked up through 2026 on the deal. We have a lull here for a moment as things have calmed down. Jeremy Grant's $32 million, this is from StatViews, is bigger than Brandon Ingram, Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, and Tyler Hero. Trades are still floating out there. Um, like, is Carl Anthony Towns getting moved from Minnesota? What are they doing? Let me go back to the comments section, see what people have to deal. 3-year deal would be perfect for Clarkson, sets us up for 2025, 26, 3 picks in 2025. 2 years to develop our young core. 2026 will be a contender, says Jason. Cody, we talked about trading for Dame. Adam says solid pickups for the Suns. Suns get a center in Ayton. What about picking up Thibault to bring great defense from the bench? Can't shoot, but hardworking defense is always a plus. Can't shoot is really a problem. Like, I was talking to Andy Larson about this today. Like, why does everyone minimize what a problem can't shoot is? Like, can't shoot is a super big problem. But Thibault's out there. He'll be on the minimum, I would think, at this point. Ben says, shout out to Kuzma's agent. I don't know who they were bidding against. The Rockets could have talked to Kuzma. Pacers were out there. Interesting. Javon Carter has signed a 3-year, $20 million deal with the Chicago Bulls. I like Javon Carter. The Bulls were definitely in desperate need of a point guard with Lonzo Ball being out. Kincaid says, I listened to your pod on 2X. 1X doesn't sound normal. Could you talk a bit faster? Scott Hill says he wants D'Lo. Mixed bag on that from some people out there. I literally had someone I wouldn't touch him on under any circumstance text me today. What do you think about the Jazz trading for Killian Hayes in Detroit? Seems like a similar player to Suggs in terms of age, shooting woes, potential to develop, could be a playmaker. I mean, you take a flyer on those guys like Killian Hayes and Jalen Suggs. I think Killian Hayes has been in the league for one more year. Those are guys that their shooting history to start years are historically bad. And there aren't a lot of track records of guys like that coming through and being successful. But if I'm the Jazz and I believed that either of those guys could make it and that they had a skill that I'm higher on Suggs than I am on Hayes, but I think both of them are a massive gamble, but I think I would do it. And I think it would be interesting. Why wouldn't another team offer Reeves a 4-year, $98 million to screw the Lakers cap in future years? Someone might. They have to be a little careful. You got to make sure you actually want him if you get him. I never thought Kuz was going to sign this sort of deal when he was in his Salt Lake in a Honda. Yeah, well, he just did. Let's see. Bruce Brown, bunch of comments from Bruce Brown. I really wanted Bruce for the Jazz. I don't think there was a way the Jazz were getting Bruce Brown at the numbers with the cap space it's available. It's interesting. This is where, you can start to look at this on the Jazz and say, like, okay, well, what else could have they done? Like, really what they did today is signed a 3-year, 2-year plus 1 player option on the 3rd year for John Collins at $25 million a year, and watch the deals come in and think about what you think about that. Right. And see how you feel about it. Like when you suddenly when Jeremy Grant gets 160 for 5 years, works out. By the way, Jeremy Grant left Denver a few years ago to go to Detroit because he wanted to be the man. Right. Remember, he was right. This is actually one of the bigger issues I have for all these teams, including Utah, with all these draft picks. Like, at what point in Oklahoma City does Jalen Williams say, like, I want out? Like, I know it's Shea's team, but I want out because I want to go prove myself. Because what Jeremy Grant just did was proved that getting out from underneath a bunch of guys, like had he stayed in Denver and played with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, because they offered him the same deal, not only did they not have Aaron Gordon, but he doesn't get 5-year, $160 million. Like Jeremy Grant taking the exact same money to go to Detroit a few years ago to become the man and then go score 20 points a game on a bad team has made him a wild amount of money and made it worth it. And this is the concern I have for Oklahoma City, Houston, Utah. All these teams have stockpiled all these picks. You start getting these young players all coming up together. Like, guys are good. They're not just sticking around. Right? They're not, oh, it's been fun to be here. I'm just not gonna, like, I'm not sticking around. I want to go and prove what I can do. And And then when I go to Detroit and I do that and I become a free agent, boom, right? Massive numbers listening to the show right now. I really appreciate all of you guys, the everydayers out there. It's totally great. From a Jazz standpoint right now, the big question is, are the Jazz going to use their cap space to do an extension for Jordan Clarkson? And so then really the Jazz don't have a lot of other options. What the Jazz have done in the last week have compiled enough salaries now, they can start piecing things together to make some other trades after everything settles. Locke, I know you've been telling us about the new starter level salary being 20 plus million, but actually the number is going to be an adjustment. Jeremy Grant and Bruce Brown exhibit A's and B's. Yeah. Jeremy Grant has signed Kuzma's mid-level starter at 25 million. Jeremy Grant signs 5-year 160 at 30 plus, and Bruce Brown signs 22 million as a starter. Like he's going to start. So the 20 million might be a little low, but it's not that far. Did Joe Ingles sign with the Magic? Someone said Joe Ingles going to the Magic. Jazz Nation did. I didn't see that. It hasn't made it. I didn't see that across the wire. Is that a fact? Or are you just thinking that's the case? Gabe Vincent out there. Trey Jones is out there. We talked about, but you are right. The Spurs would probably match. Tyus Jones just got traded already. And so Tyus Jones is already been deal. Sorry, I got to back up. We got so many comments in here. Tyus Jones is in Washington. Wow, there's a lot of comments in here. You guys are awesome. Now let me see how I catch up to them. If Max Strus got that much, how much will Reeves get? Dallin says, Locke, you called it. Collins deal looking really good. We're only 30 minutes in. I thought it was going to take till Monday. Can the Jazz trade for Brogdon for their point guard position? I mean, those are the kind of deals that we now have the salaries to be able to go make. Now, someone else has got to be willing to do it. All right, I'm going to work bottom up on the comments right now because the comments are flying in and I can't keep up on it right now and see where we get on current. Would the Jazz be interested in trading for Brogdon? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. The risk situation was obviously bad with the Clippers. And so that was obviously real. I don't know that having traded Marcus Smart, that the Celtics are actually looking to trade another player that. Joe Ingles is rumored to be going to Orlando. Nothing concrete yet. Just follow his Instagram. He'll tell you. David, could you do something for everyday listeners, like free tickets to one of the games? You could make it into, well, I often give out my own personal tickets when I don't use them. So that is a possibility for everydayers. So yes, everydayers deserve the world. Love what you did with the Locked On Cubs show. Yeah, Sam and those guys are great. So thank you very much. Miami, there was some question whether Miami was going to stretch Kyle Lowry. So will be interesting to see what happens with Kyle Lowry today. The Jazz loved Kyle Lowry the year they signed Ricky Rubio and actually made a real run at Kyle Lowry. And I think they actually thought they were going to get him. But remember, Gordon was a free agent and they could get Rubio earlier. And they wanted to show the commitment to Gordon that they had done that. And then it didn't turn out very well. What would it take for the Jazz to get Jalen Suggs? I don't know. Like, it's an interesting thing because his performance leads to very little value. But he was the 4th pick of the draft, and that front office has to save face in order to. So they're not just going to give him away. So that would be interesting. I cannot, Suggs is not a small salary because he was a 4th pick of the draft. And so, and Taylor Horton-Tucker is super young. You got to remember, Taylor Horton-Tucker is younger than Agbaji, but it's a $7 million with a club option for $9 million. He's restricted free agent. The Jazz could probably trade somebody who's at $11 million, probably take another salary. I'm just looking at you're taking Bol maybe, or Goga or something that you don't really want in your deal to get it done. I don't know if you'd have to. I'm not on a trade machine. I'm just kind of estimating numbers. But we now have Sexton at 17, Jordan at 14, Kelly at 12, Taylor at 11, all with tradable contracts we just didn't have. So, I think that's how you would do that. I just think those are the kind of players you take a flyer on. But it's interesting. You have to, like, Taylor Horton Tucker. This will be interesting. I don't have any idea who's older on these two. Like, this could be interesting. Taylor Horton Tucker, whose question is whether he's going to be able to, who's in his career shot 43% and 28% from three, is 22 and 217 days. Jalen Suggs is 22 and 27 days. They're the exact same age. Jalen Suggs has shot 39% and 27% in his career, like historically bad. So he's just was really good at Gonzaga, and he was the 5th pick of a draft, and he gets paid a lot. Like, why would you trade Taylor Horton Tucker for Jalen Suggs? Like, that seems like kind of a crazy idea, frankly. Why would you do that? Some people are talking about Zach LaVine. I've always thought that's an interesting player. I was willing to, for a long time ago, that was someone that, from a Jazz point, I would do that. Do you think Dunn has a chance to become playing, if not starting point guard for a competitive team? He had a rough history, but looked very good late last season, still pretty young as well. He's got to be able to shoot it better and more often than he did from three. At a point guard in the NBA, you really have to shoot. You have to be able to shoot. So I think that's going to be the challenge for Chris. I thought he changed his game around the basket to become that floater shooter instead of trying to go to the rim and forcing it. And that was a major level of improvement. But I know he shot 47% from three in 25 games last year. But it was on 1.6 attempts a game. That's pretty limited. So we'll see. Did I just see someone tell me that George Niang just signed with the Cavaliers on the chat room? George Niang, 3-year, $26 million deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's awesome. Congratulations, Georges and Donovan Mitchell together. And we have Cleveland's draft picks, and you have to love what they have done. They have gotten shooting around their guys, and that is what killed them in the playoffs. Cleveland, this is a big – Max Strus and George Niang are big-time deals for Cleveland. And those are teams, that's a team that we want to have struggled. Donovan Mitchell just tweeted, minivan. Kyrie Irving has agreed to a 3-year, $126 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks. 3 years, 126 with the Dallas Mavericks. Is that a good thing for Dallas or a bad thing for Dallas? By the way, Cleveland's re-signed Cedi Osman as well. So they've signed a bunch of players. 3-year, $126 million deal for Kyrie Irving. Woo! So number one free agent is off the board. And now Dallas is playing the Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic game. And it was a disaster at the end of last year. An absolute disaster at the end of last year. Wow. Crazy. Well, we shall see how all this plays out, right? And that's the beauty of what we're dealing with right now is that one. I don't know. They had no choice. That's truly the issue, is that they had no choice but to do that deal. Because if they didn't do that deal, then they're suddenly have given up what they gave up for Kyrie, and it's an absolute disaster. But I'm not sure that I think that that's the greatest thing I've ever seen from a team. Wow. How do you think of Dallas in the Western Conference? And where do you put them in the realm of things with what they've done? Cleveland, to me, right now, is the story of this. Cleveland has made the biggest impact of anyone, I think, in regards to how I would think about them as a team. They have added Max Strus and George Niang, both of which will work hard defensively. May not be great at it, but they'll work hard at it defensively. And both of which will shoot it and really, really shoot it. And both are great teammates. I mean, George is the best teammate I've ever been around I've ever been around. So to me, watching this right now, Cleveland is the grand winner and adding Karis LeVert is another ball handler, can make plays and do things to help them play. Who's your in the chat room? Let me know who's your biggest winner right now on this. Joe Ingles is expected to reach an agreement with the Orlando Magic. That has now been reported by Chris Haynes on things. So Joe Ingles is a member of the Orlando Magic on a 1-year, I would guess, minimum deal. So Milwaukee not re-signing him. And now, really, Milwaukee with Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton, and how that's coming down are the next big things to fall. And Chris Middleton has signed a 3-year, $102 million deal to stay with the Milwaukee Bucks. That's big. And that leaves them to now probably, if they can get Brook Lopez done, they can get Brook Lopez done, then they probably return to close to favorite status in the Eastern Conference. Though Cleveland is going to move up that ladder on teams and how they fit right now. And Miami has slipped a little bit. Jakob Poeltl has agreed to a 4-year, $80 million contract with the Toronto Raptors. Good day for the University of Utah Development Office, as Jakob Poeltl and Kyle Kuzma have combined to make close to $200 million today. 4-year, $80 million for a center to re-sign with Toronto. All right, let me get back to our chat room if I can. I've got the ticker rolling now on the bottom. Hopefully I got most of the major deals in there. Great numbers on the show right now. Let's see. Is Gabe Vincent available? Yes. Cam Johnson, someone just said 4 years, $108 million to the Nets. Cam Johnson has agreed to a 4-year, $108 million deal to stay with the Nets. So that is a restricted free agent that many people thought, but also kind of knew that Brooklyn would hold on to. That's also close to, $108 million. We're at $26 million for another starter there. So $20 to $25 million. Like, Cam Johnson's a nice player. But like, he's not I don't think he'll ever be an all-star. Jakob Pertl is a starting player, 20 million. Cam Johnson, 4-year, 108 at 25 million. That's where we are for starters. And you look at the Jazz, John Collins at 25, Colin Sexton's at 17, Lowry's at 17, Jordan's at 14, Kelly's at 12, Talen's at 11, and Ochai's at 4. Some interesting numbers here for how the Jazz are can build their roster and see what happens. Are the Jazz looking for a point guard? I would think so. But they have Taylor Horton-Tucker, they have Colin Sexton, they have Jordan Clarkson, they have Chris Dunn. So they have a lot of guards. Who's your big winner? Who's your big loser? Is Denver the big loser, or is Dallas the big loser that they're running it back? All right, quickly checking the chat room. I think Dennis Schroeder may be up for grads at point guard. Yeah, he's had enough run-ins at various teams. I think he will be up for grads. Any word on Austin Reeves? Nothing has come down with Austin Reeves yet. Austin Reeves, I think everyone thinks the Lakers will match whatever the Austin Reeves number is. So maybe they're waiting for some other things to fly. From the Jazz standpoint, are we re-signing JC? JC opted in, and there is reports that the Jazz are working on a deal to get Jordan Clarkson an extension that would include the some of the Jazz remaining cap space. The way that it was talked about with John Hollinger would be one way to do it. Jazz may be waiting to see what becomes available today and what they might want to use and how they're going to do it. Cavs won, but the signing of LeVert, does that mean that Garland is available? I don't think so, but I think it means Isaac Okoro is available. They do have a lot. They have added quite a bit in there. Kyle Kuzma, by the way, signed a massive deal today. He might be the winner. Jazz rookies are going to be great, says Philip. I need Pirtle's agent, says David. Cavalier can still be bullied very easily. Still not much size or strength. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are pretty big. I mean, they might be skinny. Cleveland does have a lot of pieces. They've now got them. We'll see whether or not they make any alterations to that. Is it just me, or has this been one of the most entertaining? I think it's been super entertaining in that how much stuff has happened beforehand. And I think it's just been kind of ongoing, and all the opt-ins and opt-out stuff has really changed the game a lot. The B-Max says, I'd rather have Ingles than Niang. I don't think so anymore. I don't think so anymore. I think that Joe's post ACL and age is not quite up to where George's is at this point. George. If we trade for Luka to pair him with Lowry and Kessler, we'll give up young guys' salary and a boatload of picks if it comes to it. Yeah, we probably have to give up Lowry too. Like Luka's Luka. Like they're not like maybe, who knows? But like you just don't get guys like that. Like somebody would give up the world. Remember, you have to have the best deal of anyone out there to go get that deal done. What about the point guard for the Spurs, says Jason? That's Trey Jones. He is restricted, so you'd wait to make that offer, but we also may not have enough cap space at this point to do it. Morris takes away developmental minutes and gets you below average starter numbers. He may be better in a couple areas, but it's better for the Jazz to not invest in an underwhelming finished product. Tyler, that's an interesting thought. Here's my bigger concern. My bigger concern is if we end up with the inability to run our stuff and get into things because we don't really have a point, because we don't have a point guard that does it. That would be the one that would be a bigger worry for me than others. that would be the one that kind of, to me, would catch my eye and have me be more concerned about it than others. So um, I would like to have a, I don't know. I mean, Taylor Horton Tucker developed. Colin Sexton showed some developmental signs. Chris Dunn does run the team correctly. Is Monte Morris dramatically better than Chris Dunn? And what does Monte Morris cost you at this point? Like, that, I guess, is part of the problem too. Is that there's a cost that comes with anyone you're acquiring. Jazz aren't winning the chip this year. Stop worrying about a traditional point guard. Yeah, I'm not. I'm worried about it more in the sense of, like, I want the team to be able to run. And that you got it. Like, I thought Mike Conley was super valuable last year in letting players get into their stuff and play. And then when we lost Mike Conley on a smart trade, I thought that some of our guys didn't develop quite as well and have as good opportunities because the ball didn't move the way it did. And there was a lot of pounding. So that's my thought. I mean, Monte Morris is a 39% 3-point shooter who's played 24 minutes or more in every year after his rookie year. Like, he's pretty good. And he's super solid. Like, he just does things right. Now, Monte Morris has the reason you think Monte Morris is available is because they just signed Tyus Jones and they have DeLon Wright. Monte Morris is at $10 million. So again, we're into the discussion. Are you willing to trade one of the Jazz players for $10 million to get that done? I'm going to have to get a glass of water here at some point because I've talked for 52 minutes straight and was an idiot and didn't bring in any water. So at some point here, I'm going to step away and go grab something to drink here quickly and come back. But in the free agency, you never know what might happen next. Chris Middleton. So let me review some of the biggest deals. Chris Middleton has signed a 3-year, $102 million deal with Milwaukee. Cam Johnson has signed a 4-year, $108 million deal with Brooklyn. Draymond Green re-signs for a 4-year deal in Washington. Karis LeVert signs a 2-year deal in Cleveland, and Cleveland also signs Max Strus to a 4-year, $64 million deal, and Cleveland signs George Niang to a 3-year, $26 million deal. The number one free agent on the market, Kyrie Irving, signs a 3-year, $126 million deal. Jeremy Grant signs a 5-year, $160 million deal. The Portland Trail Blazers, a sign that they will keep Damian Lillard and keep rolling. Denver loses Bruce Brown, 2-year, $45 million deal with the Indiana Pacers. Chicago keeps Kobe White, 3-year, $40, also signs Javon Carter to a 3-year, $20. Ayo DeSumo is not a bad player on that roster. Wonder what his role becomes with all those guards being signed. DeSumo, who was a second-round draft pick out of Illinois, played really well his rookie year, a little less well his second year, and might not be under contract anymore because of the fact that he was a second-round draft pick, now that I think about it. So he may just be either a restricted or an unrestricted free agent. He shot 31% from 3 last year after 38% the year before. So it's kind of a question of, like, where does he really fit? Low volume shooter. Good size, though. He was 6'5", 200. Played some good defense. That's an interesting possibility to be discussed there. So those are the kind of headliner deals right now of what's taking place with Cam Johnson signing Brooklyn. Kind of another player comes off the list. So most of the players the major players have signed, with most of them have stayed, frankly. Cleveland seems to be the one team that has been able to pull players and bring them across. Trey Jones has signed a 2-year, $20 million deal with the San Antonio Spurs, so he is off the market. So, as I suspected, the free agent guard that is having probably a tough day right now is D'Angelo Russell. And I don't know whether that's something. I mean, that is a veteran guard that's done a lot of things. And I'm not sure whether or not that's one that the Jazz are interested in or not. But um, it is the last of kind of the point guards. If we go to the back to the John Hollinger list of free agents and look at the by position, the you don't have many guys left. Let me see. Here's the free agents from John Hollinger. So Kyrie was one. Number 2 was Fred VanVleet. He's still out there. D'Angelo Russell was 3. Trey Jones was 4. Russell Westbrook is 5. Dennis Schroeder 6. Javon Carter signed with Chicago is 7. Dennis Smith is out there. Gabe Vincent is still there. Aaron Holiday, Corey Joseph, Theo Maledon, Kendrick Nunn, Sabian Lee, George Hill. Ty Jerome signed. Reggie Jackson signed. Howell Neto. And we're kind of at the bottom of the barrel at that point. If we back to John Hollinger's list top free agents, Kyrie Irving is re-signed with Dallas. James Harden has not been traded yet. Fred VanVleet still out there. Kristaps Porzingis 2 years, $60 million, so $30 million in Boston. Non-all-star starter. Miles Bridges has not been touched. Josh Hart is signed with New York. D'Angelo Russell has not been touched. Chris Middleton re-signs with the Milwaukee Bucks. Cam Johnson re-signs with Brooklyn. Jakob Poeltl re-signs with Toronto Raptors. Draymond Green re-signs with the Golden State Warriors. Austin Reeves has not been mentioned. Trent Green took his opted in. Trey Jones, 2-year, $20 million, just signed with San Antonio. Jordan Clarkson opted in. PJ Washington restricted. We haven't heard. Kobe White signs his deal with the early on. He was one of the first deals that came across. 3-year, $40 million for Chicago. Jeremy Grant signed a massive 5-year, $160 million deal with the Portland Trail Blazers. Bruce Brown, next on the list, signed a 2-year, $45 million deal with Indiana. Dylan Brooks not signed. Harrison Barnes opted in. Christian Wood not touched. Dante DiVincenzo, no word. Brooke Lopez, no word yet. Grant Williams, no word yet. Unless we just got word while I was reading this. Let's go back to the chat room. You guys have been amazing, and our audience continues to be great. From a Jazz standpoint, roster 16 right now. The big free agent signing was John Collins, and as I kind of said, I think it'll look better and better as time goes on. This is a great question from James. Can I put questions up? Oh, that's cool. Has Houston signed anyone yet? No. BMAX says the best trade is the Jazz have traded AT&T Sportsnet for K-Jazz. Best signing of the offseason. I love it. I'd assume we see very little rookie play this year. I was on a bike ride today thinking about it, and I can build a 9-man rotation that does not include a rookie for the Utah Jazz. So I would agree. If we start Taylor Horton-Tucker, Jordan Clarkson, Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, Walker Kessler, your first sub is Kelly Olynyk, probably for John Collins. Your next sub is Ochai Agbaji for Walker Kessler. Lowry slides down to the 5, playing with Olynyk. Your next sub is Colin Sexton for Jordan Clarkson. Your next sub is Chris Dunn for Taylor Horton-Tucker. And that's 9. So I could, yes, very much see the possibility of that. Utah should sign Austin Reeves or VanVleet. We do not have the money at this point to do either of those 2 deals. Not that I know, but VanVleet and Brooks haven't signed, maybe to the Rockets. Rockets, VanVleet seem to make a lot of sense. Brian says Niang to Cleveland is a solid pickup. So is Max Strus. Cleveland's had a great day. If you're Donovan, you are fired up. Pack says Dennis Smith played good last year. Yeah, he did. I get really hesitant, and this includes us, frankly, when you're playing on teams that aren't playing for anything. Like, I get nervous on that. Like, Charlotte didn't play for anything last year. I don't think we'll hear about Clarkson extension of the Jazz. For sure don't sign anyone. They'll want to use the cap space for. I think so. You have to make sure you're doing it right. Also, if you can use the cap space, you can do a declining deal for him, which makes it a I don't know how you trade it. It's a little tricky. I'd have to look at this year instead. Locke, while you wait for more signings, can you give us some insight on Summer League play with the 3 rookies? Taking the kids to Vegas for Summer League. That'll be great. You'll have a wonderful time. It's super fun. I do not know yet, like, what the status on Taylor Hendricks or Bryce Sensabaugh is. So that, to me, Keontae George we talked to today in the media. I'll be there tomorrow as well. We talked to them and Keontae, I think, will really play, and we'll see him. We'll see him thrive, I guess. Or he should be. I mean, Keontae George should be one of the best players on the floor in the Salt Lake Summer League. And then depending on who he's playing, should probably be one of the best players on the floor in every Summer League game and hopefully be successful. What's Dante Exum doing? I think he was on the champion team that won the championship in the EuroLeague this year. I would hope so. Looking like we won't see Bryce or Hendricks in Salt Lake Summer League. There's a chance that's true. We'll have to see. Would the Jazz want Malik Beasley back? Played good while he was with them. So our guards are Colin Sexton, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Chris Dunn, Jordan Clarkson, Ochai Agbaji. Where's Malik playing? That, I think, is the real question. All right, our audience is big enough that I am going to stay on, but I'm going to get a glass of water. So let me see if I just put a little banner up that says, back in a second, going to get water because I'm out. There it is. Okay, I am back in a moment. Needed water. Don't leave me. I see how many of you are watching. Go chat in the chat room. I'll come back. We'll see if deals happen while I jump away. I am back. Oh, and we added listeners, not lost them. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anything happen? Did anything new happen? No, nothing has happened yet. All right. So chat room, let's go back to see what we got coming in. Jazz trade for David Locke. No. There are standing by. T-Bad FW says Jazz are in a great position, can let a deal come to them. And they just have what's so interesting to me about what just changed like within the days on the Jazz is when we were talking about making a trade with Portland or Charlotte, they just didn't have anything they could move other than Colin Sexton. And now all of a sudden, like, I don't know whether we have enough pieces that someone really would like. They're all good. None of them are great. But I would say you now have enough pieces of that puzzle that you can put it together and try to see like, and be able to make most deals. And that makes it interesting. The other one I would say for the Jazz is like the league is the Jazz are going to have this deep team. They're going to have 240 minutes of basketball. And that worked fairly well last year. Now, some of those guys were pretty good veterans. This will be some younger guys in Abaji and Kessler growing. But you have Markkanen, Clarkson, Collins, three pretty bona fide guys starting. And so to me, that's a fairly good sign for kind of what a team that can kind of play all 48 minutes and be successful. You just don't have, depends how great can Lowry be. Is 18 million too much for JC? I don't think so. And we're seeing, like, if we look down the deal, if we look down at the deals right now, guys are generally signing deals. If we kind of look, so here's a bench player in Niang who got right around 9 million. Max Strus, who they must think is probably starting as their 3, got 4 years, 64. So that's what 15 would be. So that's 16 a year. Jeremy Grant, who's a starter, gets 30 plus a year. Bruce Brown, who's going to start, gets 22 a year. Kyle Kuzma, who's starting, is getting 25 a year. So I think you're seeing kind of the market for what a starter. Cam Johnson just got 25 a year. That's kind of the starter range. Trey Jones got 10 a year. And Kyrie gets 40. Because he's a star. So I don't think it's super surprising. Like Jordan, you look at the Jazz deals, John Collins is at 25. So that's starter. That's basically what we just decided is kind of starter numbers. And then the rest of the guys are probably underpaid for what they can deliver. Colin Sexton at 17 could be a starter. Lowry at 17, certainly. Jordan Clarkson at 14 seems really low if he's your starting shooting guard. Kelly Olynyk at 12 coming off the bench now, but borderline starter. Taylor Horton-Tucker 11 if he's your starting point guard seems low. Seems in the salary cap realm of things, the Jazz have gotten over the 90%. And I have not looked at have a non-taxpayer mid-level at 12 they could use if they got over, and they have a biannual at 4. I think we still might have a $9 million trade exception available too, if we needed it. We have $48 million before we get to the luxury tax. Not that I think we should be getting anywhere near the luxury tax at this point. So I think, we have, depending what you want to do with cap space, we have a little bit of stuff. Locke, 26, 36, or 46. Closer to 46. Need to see how everything else shakes out. I feel like everyone's going to be pretty good. I think the impact of the 90% rule is that most teams are going to be pretty good. It's a really good point. The Rockets haven't done anything yet. As the Jazz sit right now, do you think we can win 45 to 50 games? I love the way the team's looking at it. I think that's high. That's why I didn't really like 46 as my number. He might be worth 20 times at Jordan, probably our most marketable player. Kessler's pretty marketable, though. Kessler's pretty funny. Still a lot of free agents out there. Reeves, Brooks, Williams, Van Vliet, Lopez, Hashimura, Reddish, Wood, Westbrook, Bamba, Vincent, DiVincenzo, Beasley, Plumlee, Russell, says Man. He is correct. Um, do you share Zanuck and I think it was Ainge's opinion that point guards are less relevant? Traditional 6'1" guards, yes. Somebody who organizes um, the group, I think, really matter. Interesting. The one to keep an eye on is whether or not the one team that might have had a better day than we're going to give them credit for is Phoenix, by the way. They had Drew Eubanks, Keita Bates-Diop, Damian Lee, Josh Okogie, got Isaiah Wainwright re-signed, got Cameron Payne redone. They might have had a little bit better day than we're realizing. I mean, they were very limited in what they could do. And so maybe that's what makes them as though they had a better day than you think. Long shot, but isn't DeJounte Murray a perfect fit for the Jazz? I'm not totally sold on DeJounte Murray, honestly. So I have to understand why he's a perfect fit. He's long, he's good defensively, and he is Gabe Vincent has signed a 3-year, $33 million deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Miami's losing guys. I'm not sure. So I have to understand what you think of DeJounte Murray as a perfect fit. Like he's a scoring, mid-range shooting, inefficient, supposed to be very good defensive guard who I'm not sure is as good defensively as he was when he was younger. Whose outside shot would not scare me if I'm the other team. I thought he was a terrible match next to it's a career 33.5 3-point shooter, which seems really limited. Good mid-range shooter, I guess. Shot 46% from the field last year. 51% EFG was better than it has been in the past. So made some progress. He's 26 years old. His timing's perfect. His age is perfect for us. But I do think I have to understand a little bit of what you think of him as I answer that question. D'Lo's agent calling Miami. There might not be any player less Miami than D'Lo. Vincent to the Lakers could open a window for Reeves. It'd be interesting to see what the Lakers have used to sign these deals to get this done. Kevin B says he averaged like 10 assists last year, or 2 years ago, saying he was on Atlanta last year. He's an organizer you're talking about. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, how many traditional point guards are there, right? So I think that's a little bit of it is there just aren't that many guys that are like that left. And certainly at 6'1", it's a problem. If Van Vliet signs with another team, do the Raptors go for D'Lo? Maybe. I mean, D'Lo's really. I mean, Minnesota had to get off. We're desperate to get off him, right? So this is a guy who scores 20 points a game. Is a pretty good player. Former number 2 pick of the draft, and like teams were dying to get off him, which makes you wonder. Thank you very much. Want to appreciate you taking the time to cover free agency. Glad I got a friendly voice to navigate me. It's been good. The audit numbers have been good too, so it's been totally worth it. Miami banking on Lillard, possible. It doesn't feel like they're going to make that move. What about a lineup of DeJounte, Abaji? Is that marketing? Collins and KO. But what happened to Walker Kessler? Are you going to Summer League on the 8th? I will not go to Vegas for Summer League. I will be doing the 3 games here in Salt Lake, though. So come out, say hi. What kind of point guard the Jazz need? I mean, I think this is a great question. And do you believe Chris Dunn's enough? Do you believe Taylor Horton Tucker's enough? I just think we need someone who can, when collectively, when it matters, get us organized, get us controlled, maybe make a play, make the right play. And I'm not totally sold on that we have that. If we tried to trade for a point guard, there aren't many. Monty Morris is interesting in Washington because they have made the move to they acquired trade or Tyus Jones, and they have Delonte Wright on their roster. So they might be willing to make a deal. I really think Chris Dunn could be a great point guard with leadership and experience as CPT Bronco. That's too bad. Nick Friedel of ESPN has been part of the massive ESPN layoffs, which included Jeff Van Gundy today. I don't think D'Lo will add getting us into correct things late in game. I mean, that's probably the one thing he does great is he's a stud late in games. Now, does he pass it? I don't know. Someone said the Lakers should be able to re-sign Rui, Austin, and D'Angelo Russell under a hard cap. It depends on each player's starting salary. Eric Pincus, who's great at this, with their moves that they've already made. I suspected the Lakers were going to have a very good game day today. Mike Conley would be great with the team we have right now. Mike Conley, like 3 years ago, would be great. Mike Conley is walking a tightrope to the end of his career right now where it gets really hard, really fast. What do I think of the ESPN layoffs? I think those are people that have, worked incredibly hard their entire careers, and I'm super sorry that any of them got laid off. I mean, it's a personal human issue more than anything else. I mean, Susie Colbert's been amazing. Van Gundy's done great jobs. They've both made loads and loads of money, but these are people that work for the passion of what they're doing. And so I think it's really, really too bad to see that. Have we met the 90% rule? Yes, I believe we are at 90% of our salary. All right. This is slowing down. We will probably call it after an hour and 17 minutes of consecutive live chat. From a Jazz standpoint, no move has been made, and I think the likelihood on what happens with our remaining cap space is it's used on a Jordan Clarkson extension. At that point, we kind of know our roster unless trades become available. And I think what the most interesting conversation we've had is when we've talked about some of the trades, like which of our guys, like you're really willing to move Talon for some of these guys? Or they're the same age? Like Talon's 22 years old. Talon's younger than Abaji. And, are you, I like Jalen Suggs, but like Jalen Suggs and Taylor Horton Tucker are the exact same age, and Taylor Horton Tucker's been better in every aspect of his career than Jalen Suggs at this point, other than draft position. No James Harden deal yet, it's a complicated, hard one to get done. We'll see what happens. It gets more complicated as time goes on, too. And Daryl Morey has been known to run these things out. I think the biggest next name out there is Brook Lopez. Is he re-signing with Milwaukee, which puts Milwaukee back up on the top of the list of contenders? And so I think when you look at the latest number, the kind of story of what we see next, Harden along with Lopez are probably the biggest stories. From if you take a quick look at the contenders here, Boston has made the big change in the East with Kristaps Porzingis. Philadelphia's losing Harden. Cleveland's had a monster day. Knicks have not done a thing. Brooklyn have been rebuilt. Atlanta, we'll see where they are. Miami has lost a lot of guys. Will they get Damian? Toronto has stood still. Indiana's probably gotten better with the Bruce Brown addition, but I wouldn't get overly excited about it. and Washington's lost Bradley Beal. So the East, I think the top power structure almost is now Milwaukee, Boston, and Cleveland at the end of today. The West, Denver's lost Bruce Brown. Memphis is in the midst of Ja Morant hell. Sacramento was not able to pull off a Draymond or anything. Phoenix is obviously vastly different with Bradley Beal. Clippers have not pulled off a James Harden yet. Golden State re-signs Draymond, moves out Jordan Poole, adds Chris Paul, uniquely different. Lakers, I think, are going to be noticeably different in the West. Minnesota still seems to be like in a bind with where Anthony Edwards' contract's going, what they're going to do with Karl Anthony Towns. They kept Nickeil Alexander-Walker, lost Taurean Prince. Pelicans have done nothing. Oklahoma City's done nothing. Dallas kept Kyrie. Who knows what that means? Had a good draft night in theory. Jazz added John Collins and have kept everything else together and 3 draft picks. Portland was 33-49, have paid a buttload of money for Jeremy Grant. Houston has stayed quiet. San Antonio stayed quiet. The West, I don't think anything has changed. Denver is the dominant team. Bruce Brown loss is completely fixable. And the Lakers, I think, have gotten much better. Frankly, getting Russell Westbrook off their roster was probably the biggest thing they could do the whole time. All right. Unless something crazy happens right now, I'll be back with you Monday for a little Locked On Jazz. We'll get ready for Summer League. Hope to see you out at the arena. Thanks very much for tuning in.